So we have all been in a position or at an appointment where we're sitting on a chair waiting for a doctor to come in, and they come tell us that we need a specific procedure or that we're going to need this and that, and then they just start throwing information at you and you're just confused and it's just too much to handle. Yes, this is an example of a barrier in listening, which it would be called overload, is when you just too much that you don't understand what's going on. So I'm going to be talking about other barriers that are common in listening and how they affect our communication with other people, and specifically in the dental environment, as my academic major is pre-dental and hoping to be a dental hygienist one day. So let's start off with our literature review. My first article that I did was all about listening, and explained that listening is a type of nonverbal communication. Listening is important because it gives that trust and it gives that satisfaction that you are comprehending what the other person may be saying or what you're telling to another peer. In this article, it explained a study they did with some physicians, and it showed that about 70% of the time those physicians tend to interrupt and within 11 seconds of starting a conversation with the patient, which is not good, because as a patient you want to know that your doctors actually really care of what's going on or what you're going in specifically for that day. So it's important to have good listening skills as a healthcare worker so that you are able to understand what's wrong with your patient and what they need help with. The second article did a study on 40 juniors in high school. It was a test on where they would listen to questions and then they would have to answer. And some of the barriers that the students found with the test was that they would lose concentration within just starting. They would get lost or lose focus, and then they wouldn't know what to answer. They also thought that another barrier was the speaker who was asking the question was speaking way too fast. So then when they were listening, they didn't really quite catch on what was being asked because of how fast they were speaking. And another barrier they thought that was very common was they would get lost from the main text, or like the main idea from the text that they were being asked, and then they just didn't know what to say anymore. So it's important for the students that those barriers were to be known. Well, the barriers were the reasons that they weren't able to comprehend exactly what the questions were being asked in the test. And then the third article was an article on active listening, specifically in music. It did a study on 3 children who were 10-year-olds, and it showed that the students, they were able to listen to a piece of music and then play it, which was good because it showed that their active listening skills were very good. But then it also showed that the connection between them playing it and actually comprehending what the music meant was not as quite there. So it was a good outcome because the active listening was good, but then the communication, like the expressive communication and incorporation, just wasn't as there. So that was kind of the con of that experiment part. And then Article 4 was a active listening. It was the key. There were key successfulness in hospitals. So they did a study on about, I think it was 100 managers or so, and they all participated in an test. It was a test where they would listen to questions and then they would have to answer them. And there was 3 different levels of manager, the lowest level and then the highest level. And the results show that the highest level managers were the ones that got the lowest score because their active listening skills weren't as good as the lower level managers, who were the ones that got the highest score. And the overall mean for the results was a 3.32 out of 3. So it was somewhat good, but it was shown that those higher managers didn't have those listening skills as good as the other manager, which is important that they do have, because as managers, you want your hospitals to be successful and you want your patients to be satisfied with the help they're getting or going in for. And then the last article was a effectiveness of active listening and initial interactions. It talked about how many people tend to set this profile, they want to set this story or mindset when they first meet people based off their first impression, and they kind of want to tell their story without really listening. So it gave on tips on how to be a good listener and to be present at the moment and really focus on what they're saying to you, so that they have trust in you, and then when you do it to them, you feel that comfort and smoothing relationship with them, because it's important to be a good listener so your guys' relationship has a good outcome. So how do all these articles relate to dental? Well, it's important to be a good listener in dental because you want to be able to have a good relationship with the patient and the doctor, so that the patient is able to completely understand and have full trust in you. Obviously, as dentists, your hands are going into the patient's mouth, and the patient, well, obviously you want your patient to feel comfortable and have trust to do all those procedures. And it also helps the dentist or the doctor, the dental hygienist, to have that confidence and acknowledgement that they're able to provide to the patients, so that they are understanding what they're being told. It also, obviously it helps give a solution to the patient for whatever procedure they're going in. So those are always good. And then some barriers in dental specifically. So for overload would be too much information. When the dentist provide too much information to a patient, it can confuse them, and then they just don't really know what they're going in for, or what exactly is wrong with their teeth, or what they should be doing in order to improve their hygiene. Complexity would be the terminology dentists use. It's important for dentists and doctors to use the right terms for patients so that they're able to understand and not hear these really big words and get confused and stressed and start panicking because they hear these words that may sound really bad but they're not. So it's important for them to be transparent and be able to respond well, so that the patients are able to listen and be like, okay, yes, I know what that means. And then another listening barrier in dental is the environment. Obviously, patients want to be in a well environment where they don't feel claustrophobic. There's not too many staff rushing around them and they just get panic or scared. The structure of the room is also important. Like, those small things really matter. So, in conclusion, listening is important to build a strong and trusting relationship with patient and doctor, and complex overload environment are barriers that can cause stress and confusion with patients that can lead to misunderstanding, miscommunication, and not understanding. So it's important to be a good listener for patients, and it's also important for the doctors and dentists so that they are able to give their patient a good response and they're able to be satisfied at the end of the appointment. And this is my bibliography. Thank you.